Hello. Hi, Erin. Welcome to another live stream. That is really bright behind me. Sorry. I don't know that there's much I can do about that. All right. So today I'm going to talk about extending your season or spring gardening in zone 3 or 4. Tori needs, and or she's going to yell. Did you hear me start?
Say hi, Tori.
Yeah. She says she needs to come be a part of everything. This is her plant room, don't you know? She says hi too. She's checking to make sure that I'm looking after all of her plants properly. So, I'm going to get started. Like I said, I'm talking about extending the season. So what you can do to start your growing season just like a little bit earlier. So it's really nice here right now. It's been like plus 20 this whole week. I have some pictures which hopefully I will be able to show you. We're going to see if I can figure that out. And we usually still have snow. So while for me this doesn't feel reasonable, this is not a typical year for us at all. So while I am starting things outside, I'm also very much aware that we could get more snow. We could get more frost. I don't know that we will. It's been plus 20 for like a week, but we could, and you sort of need to be prepared that that's a thing that could happen. So what are some basic ways that you can extend your season in a cheap and reasonable way? So I have actually been looking this week. All of the stores are sold out of all of the greenhouses. This is a side effect of everybody deciding that this year is the year to do gardening. So most of the pre-built ones are sold out. I do have a greenhouse. Let's see if I can add a picture. I don't know if I can. No, I don't think I can add a picture. That's fine. So I do have a greenhouse that I purchased last year. It's like just one of the wire frame ones that has like a slip cover that goes over it, a plastic cover with a zipper down the front. Those work very well. If you can find one anywhere, like it will do a lot to help you out with your seed starting, to help with hardening off. They're just a very useful gardening tool, and they're $40. It's a lot cheaper than like building an entire greenhouse or trying to buy one. So that's definitely something that you can look at doing. But there's also even cheaper and easier options, especially if you have some of this stuff around your house. So things that I have personally used in the past. Clear tote bins, like just a clear Rubbermaid tub. You can buy them at Home Depot or Canadian Tire, or maybe you just have one hanging around. You can very easily make a mini greenhouse out of that. If you want, you can sort of go hardcore with it and like poke holes in the bottom so that it actually has drainage. But you can also just use it as a bin. Be aware though that if you're putting something like that outside, they're not really rated for UV. So if you leave it out over the winter and then the whole summer, like the plastic is going to end up getting very brittle, and it will probably crack and break if you try to move it, especially if it's got like a ton of heavy dirt in it. But otherwise, like it will work just fine, especially if you just want to start like one flat of seeds, like that would be perfect. So the benefit for starting seeds outside instead of starting them inside, there's a few very simple benefits. So for one, you don't need to have lights, which is great, because not everybody can afford to go out and buy LED lights or string lights or anything like that. So that's a very easy one. The second thing is when you grow your little plants inside, to get them outside to go into your garden, you need to harden them off, which is kind of a process. Basically what you need to do is get them used to being outside. They're inside and they've been babied. So you need to like slowly put them outside where there's not very much sun, because if they get too much sun, they could get sunburned. They need to not have too much wind. You need to make sure that they're getting watered. They need to be protected. So putting them in like a greenhouse or something is a good way to do that hardening off. But it's even better if you don't have to harden off. So if you plant them outside in a greenhouse, they're going to naturally be a little bit hardier than if you started them inside, basically is the idea. Other things that you can use to start your seeds outside. Milk jugs, like the big 4-liter. I don't have any. I use them to hold water in my plant room. But just like a 4-liter milk jug, just cut it partway through so that you can still use the handle to like flip it open and close, so that you can, when it gets really hot, you don't want to have the lid on. So you need something that you can sort of remove a lid from. So you would cut it partway down the middle, fill the bottom with dirt, put a couple of holes in it, and plant some seeds in there. The things that you're going to be starting in like that are things that are going to be pretty fast growing. So like spinaches and lettuces and chard, once they get to, you know, kind of about this big, you're going to be planting them out in your garden, but starting them outside gives them like a really good hardy start. You can use pop bottles the same way, just like cut partway through the top so that it sticks together with a lid. You're going to have to like duct tape a tab to keep them closed. But those work just as like a mini greenhouse. The other thing that you can do is this year, not every year here, but this year you would be able to just plant some seeds directly in the dirt and just put the top or bottom half of a pop bottle just right over top as like a cloche. So that'll just warm up the temperature directly around, so your seeds start a little bit earlier than they otherwise would. Your bin does not necessarily have to be clear. If you're starting seeds in it, I would recommend using a clear bin. But one of the things that I'm going to be doing is building a potato bin, and I'm going to be doing that this week because I want to get an advance on the season. So I have a bunch of these cloth bags that I've purchased over the years. This one's camo pattern, but I have black ones. You can make your own if you wanted to. This one's a pretty big one. But I will put the cloth bag into a plain Rubbermaid tub. Fill the bag with dirt, put potatoes in it. The bin is movable and it has a lid. So what I'll do is I'll take the whole Rubbermaid bin, set it outside in a sunny place with the lid off during the day, and at night I'll put the lid on. And that will just protect the soil, and once they start shooting up, protect the tops, which can be pretty delicate. Potato greens don't really like getting frosted, so you do want to be able to cover them just in case. But that's a really good way to get a jump on your potato season. So you can use like a homemade thing, you can purchase something. The other thing that I have used, which I have pictures of that I'll try to add in, is another sort of homemade solution, which is I had this extra shelving unit that I didn't want anymore. It was made out of plastic. So I put it outside and I wrapped it in clear, like the plastic that you would put down if you're painting. Aaron says, I read that I can grow potatoes in broken rain barrels, of which I have an abundance, but I'm worried because my rain barrels are tall and black. That is actually fine. So there's a couple of ways that you can do it, or that different people do it. You need to know, I think I talked last time about potatoes being determinate or indeterminate. Anyway, the potatoes would probably have a harder time. Yeah, that's exactly right. The potatoes would have a harder time at the bottom of the bin. And then as the plant grows, you would cover it up progressively. I've seen people do that. I've also seen people do that with buckets of various sizes, but you cut the whole bottom off. So you set essentially a tube on cement or something. You plant your potatoes in, you cover them up as they grow, and then at the end of the year, you just take the bucket off and your potatoes all fall out. That would make a big mess of dirt wherever you did it, but I mean, that would be a pretty easy way to get them out, especially if they are in a bucket and the option is like trying to lift the bucket and dump it out. That sounds like a difficult thing, but it is tricky to get the potatoes in the beginning. But because if it's black plastic, then they'll actually, so the black plastic will get some heat from the sun. You would cover the green leaves. So the potato is going to send up shoots. You're going to cover and leave like the top ½ inch and cover everything up till there. You wait until it grows another foot. You cover it up to the top ½ inch again. You leave a few little green leaves so that the potato can continue growing up. Yeah, so I had a shelving unit. I just covered it in cheap plastic, and that is a very cheap and easy way to make a greenhouse. So you can also build a greenhouse. This year, I am actually building a greenhouse in our backyard. So I'm sort of mid-process of that, which is what I've been focusing on this week. It's a lot of work, folks, building your own greenhouse. It's totally going to be worth it. I'm going to use it. My plan for our greenhouse is to start some of our veg in there, like the greens and anything that's going to be planted out into a different spot, to start most of those things in there. And then to grow in the greenhouse during the summer, things that want a bit more heat. So I've got some eggplants, I've got peppers, I've got tomatoes. I planted the tomatoes, wrote a date on some of these. Oh, here we go. So these are my onion seedlings. Some of my onions. These ones are Red Globe and Walla Walla onions. I planted on April the 10th. Today is April the 25th. And we have nice big onions. The other thing is, if you look at the bottom, I don't know if you guys can see this, but there are little baby roots in the bottom of this container. So they do grow pretty big roots. I will top these guys probably tonight, and they'll be ready to go out in a week. And they smell like onions already. It's great. So those are ready. The same day I planted, they need watered, so they're a little bit sad. I planted a bunch of tomatoes and peppers. These ones are Roma tomatoes from High Mowing Seeds. I always like to label my cups so that I remember what they are, because otherwise I forget. And then I usually plant, like this one has 3 in it, you can see. I usually plant a couple. You need covered back up. You're getting floppy. They need watered. That's what they really need. I like to plant a couple in each cup, especially when I'm using seeds that are a few years older. And then when they're about this size, I will transplant them each into their own individual cups. So once I've done that, I want them to be able to go out into the greenhouse right away. It's warm enough for them out there right now. And then they can start the hardening off process. And by the time that I'm ready to plant them, they should be very sturdy, healthy little tomato plants. That's my goal. Okay. So this is how big my tomatoes have gotten since April the 10th. And then I have pepper plants. Pepper plants grow a little bit slower. These ones are organic picnic peppers. Honestly, if I hadn't been planning on doing a greenhouse, I probably would have planted them. April the 10th is definitely too late to be planting peppers. So as you can see, they're quite a bit smaller even than the small tomato plants. They are just getting their very first true leaves. So they're, because I have a greenhouse, they will hopefully catch up. But in the middle of May or the end of May, I'm going to have to make a call and decide whether I'm going to be buying pepper plants. And we'll see. I don't know then. I don't know yet. Do you think that we have another frost coming up, like a weird snowstorm? Yeah, I think it's kind of a 50-50. We do usually have snow still now. This year we don't. There's been one other year recently where we didn't, and we had a good long season, and we didn't have another snow or frost. But that's not the average. Like, our average last frost date isn't until the middle of May. So, like, officially, we still have 20 more days until our last frost. So I'm not going to plan as though it's not going to happen. Do I think it will happen? 50-50. Like, it might, but it's also been plus 20. So it's hard to plan for that while feeling already summery weather. We haven't had any rain yet. That's kind of a kicker. Nothing will start growing outside until we really get a rain. I think it's fully possible that we could get another snowstorm. At this point of the year, we know it's not going to stick though. So a snowstorm is kind of just like raining. It's not going to stay. It's just precipitation, which will water your garden. But I wouldn't be putting out like zucchinis or cucumbers yet. It's definitely still too early. That would be very risky. Definitely, by the way, go ahead and ask questions. Like definitely ask questions. That's a big part of why I wanted to do this live stream. I specifically kept what I wanted to talk about pretty small so that I would have time to ask or answer questions. So definitely, Erin, feel free to ask your questions and I'll answer them as I can. So what to start now under cover? If you're wanting to start things outside, potatoes are a really good thing to start because you can start them nice and early. As soon as you can work the ground, you can basically start potatoes. Or like I'm doing, if you're going to be doing them in, if you want to be doing them in bins anyway, like start them now and put them out and just be sure that you can cover them. If you think, like if your area isn't as summery as our area is right now, which for a lot of our zone is pretty well everywhere else, just have a plan to cover. Like you don't need it necessarily a bin lid, unless you think you're going to get a really hard cold frost. Like a bed sheet is honestly enough. It's just so that the frost doesn't touch the leaves. That's the thing that will kill your plants, is actual humidity and cold touching the leaves. So if you want to put some things out, just be sure that you could cover them with like a blanket or anything like that. You probably don't even really need a blanket. Like I said, just a bed sheet would probably be good enough. A plastic tote lid is going to be perfect. You just need to remember to take them off. So one of the problems that we have in our zone every year is that we usually have a period where nights are still pretty cold, but our days are quite warm, which is a hard thing to work with a greenhouse because you need to be sure that your plants are still going to be covered. But you can't leave them covered during the day. So what you need to plan for is in the morning to go outside, uncover your things. And in the evening when it starts getting dark, you go back out and you recover them. So just if you're doing any sort of greenhouse, whether it's a zip up one, whether it's like a very fancy created one where you duct tape clear plastic around it, make sure that you have a way that you can actually open it up so that you get that airflow. That's part of what hardening off is getting that sort of airflow through to your plants. You want them to be hardy, and that means exposing them to a certain amount of the elements, but not in a fully unprotected fashion. Yeah, so you can use a clear bin, you can use milk jugs. What else do I have? Okay, I have a few show and tell things. I showed you my plants already. You can buy these everywhere. That's upside down. Here we go. These little Jiffy greenhouses. If you just want to start like with your kids, or you just want to start like a couple of things, these will work fine. Now, I will start off by saying I'm not a super fan of these little pucks, but a lot of people do like them. Just be aware that if you're using them, when you are planting your starts into a different container, you need to take off the wrapping. They say that you don't. They say that your plant will grow through it. It will inhibit your plant's growth. It will get the roots stuck. So you do need to plan to take those things off. Now, I use these trays a little bit differently because I don't like the pucks. What I usually do is I take the tray apart. We want to keep this. We want to keep this. And I take all these little pucks out and I don't use them. I will put cups in the tray instead. Now these trays have like a little water path. This one is quite deep because these are the big Jiffy pucks. If you hear scratching, that's Tori helping. So you could use any sort of little cups that you're starting your seeds in. I've used the wax paper, like little kid cups that they sell at the grocery store for kids' snack juice. But you would just put your cups or your pots on top, and then your water reservoir. Make sure that all of your plants are going to get watered. If you really want to be sure and you're worried about a deep reservoir, you can also just take your cups, which for sure also should always have, make sure we don't dump these out, have holes in the bottom, and you could feed a string through 2 of the holes, and the string will wick the water in your tray up into the cup in the right amounts. So then I would set all my cups in here, and then you could cover them. Now, it doesn't need to be completely closed to be warm enough outside or inside. It just is a little bit of extra heat to get those seeds growing. So you could use something like these little Jiffy sets, and these are like $6 or $7, maybe $8. I have a million of these little trays. They're very convenient. The other thing that you can do, and if it wasn't so warm, this is what I would be doing. This is why I have these little boxes. I was going to start onion bulb sets, just in case my onions weren't going to get big enough. So I have a little box. What I would do is fill it up with soil to about the halfway mark. And then I was just going to nestle the bulbs into the soil and then put this whole container outside. Onion bulbs can go out now. As soon as your ground is workable, as soon as you can get in, as soon as it's not frozen anymore in that top couple of inches, that's when you can plant onions, and that's when you want to plant your onions and your garlic. If you didn't plant garlic in the fall, as early as you possibly can is when you want to get your garlic in. So just a little bin like this. Again, like the other thing that you could do is fill this up with little cups or with solo cups with your seeds. Start your seeds in here. It depends on how many seeds you're starting, right? But this would be good for a lot of people. So what could you start now in something like this? Any of your lettuces or greens, Swiss chard, spinach, lettuce. You could start your, like I said, your onion sets in here. Just give them a little bit of an advance on the growing season. And then your brassicas. This is the time to be starting brassicas. My preference with starting, so like cabbages, broccolis, and cauliflowers, is to start them outside. Now, the reason for this is that I find inside where it's warmer, they do tend to get leggy even if you have lights. If you start them outside, they're going to be hardier and they transplant well. So if you start them outside, it's just going to be a little bit easier for the plants. They're not going to get leggy. And if they get leggy, the issue that you have then is that they might tip over. You might need to support them. I like to have low maintenance plants. So, all right, Erin, ask me your question. Start lettuce in a plastic container. Yes, you definitely for sure can. Lettuce is really easy and it transplants like so well. You can start lettuce in anything. So if I was doing it, for example, in this little container, yeah, you would keep the lid on during the day until, I mean, not when it's plus 20, but like if it gets chilly, if we have a couple of chillier days, when it gets down to +5, then you would put the lid on. But you would put your lettuce in the bin. So whether you put cups in your bin, right, or whether you just put dirt straight on in the bin, like I've done with these ones, either way is fine. So you put your dirt in, fill it to about half up, and that's so that you can put the lid on when your seedlings are still small. So fill it halfway up with dirt. You're going to sow your lettuce right on top. Cover it a little bit, water it in. Just be aware that if it's in these clear plastic bins, if you haven't punched any holes in the bottom, there's no drainage. So don't make it too wet. Just be aware of that. But you will find that plants started outside often need more water because of the wind with evaporation. So you'd start your little plants in here, and then when they're teeny, teeny, tiny, you're going to see that they look very different to lettuces started inside. Lettuces started inside are going to stretch a little bit unless you've got your light like right on top of them. Okay. So it's normal for them to stretch a bit. It's fine. They'll catch up. It's not a big deal. If you start them outside, they're going to start right next to the soil. They're going to be beautiful and very small. And then if it's, like I said, if it's +20, you don't need to put the lid on really, but at night you would put the lid on and cover it just to give them like a little bit. It's a mini greenhouse, right? So it's going to stay a little bit warmer inside. The water that's in the soil will actually help keep it moist and humid and warm. It's a bit of a heat sink for them, and you'll get really good lettuce starts. And then when you're ready to plant them wherever it is that you want your lettuce, you can just very gently sort of, I like to use a fork and get under them and lift out the whole little root ball. The other thing that you can do is, honestly, you can fully grow lettuce in containers. So if you have a pot that you wanted to grow lettuce in, you would do the same thing. Fill the pot up with dirt, sow your lettuce seeds on top, and to cover it at night if it gets chilly, you can just do anything. Like you could take just a lid from something else that fits on top of the pot. You just want to keep a little bit of extra heat in there just to give those seedlings a little bit of extra protection. But lettuce is pretty hardy. The other thing that you can do to get a jump on the season, I'm going to grab something. Oh, everything over here needs watered. Okay. So this is a lettuce that I bought at the grocery store. You can buy lettuces that have a root ball. So grow, specifically this time of year, I like to buy the lettuces that come with a root ball. And then I plant them. And you can just continue having lettuce from that one plant that you bought, or buy 3 or 4 different plants of different types. And you can plant them and they will grow just fine. Now, some of them are planted in rock wool because they're grown hydroponically so that you aren't sending dirt home with your customers if you're a grocery store. So you could leave the rock wool on, but again, like if they're planted in something like the Jiffy pots where they have like a nylon sort of wrap around them, you would want to take that off before you planted it. But yeah, you could definitely plant lettuce outside now, especially given our weather. Just be prepared that you may need to cover it. Yeah, but you could definitely plant it in a bin outside. If you want to do like baby lettuce, for like baby greens, you would sow really thickly in something like this. So as many seeds as you can pack in. Basically, you'd take your whole packet and empty the whole packet in here, and then you would just use your scissors to harvest them. Just snip, snip, snip. Not sure if you should keep the lid on at night or take them in at night. Leave them outside, but put the lid on. If we get a frost, like if it gets into the minuses, you would bring it inside. But otherwise, leave it outside. The other thing that you could do is you could leave them outside and do a double cover. So think of covering your plants at night like giving them a blankie. Okay, so if you've got your plants in a container outside and you put their little lid on, you're tucking them in for the night, they've got their little blankie. If it's going to get really cold, if it's going to get into the minuses, we're going to hit -5 or something. If you take another bin and put it upside down over top of your pot or your other bin, then you have 2 blankets instead of just 1. So that's kind of a sneaky trick if you don't, like if you have a gigantic like 50 by 50 sort of garden, this is completely impractical. If you have one little pot of lettuce, like yes, that will totally work. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't need to be a dedicated garden bin. You can use anything that would fit over top, right? So basically I would not bring them in. I would leave them outside 100% of the time, especially given what our weather is like at the moment. Not a lot would convince me to bring them in. I would prefer to leave them outside as much as possible because then they're going to get a little bit hardier. I'm a little bit mean to my plants, my outside plants. So this is the same thing as watering your garden to me. It's a similar idea. So when I water, I would rather water my garden deeply and less often rather than having to water a little bit every day. That's a gigantic pain in the butt to me. But a lot of people do water every day. Now, there are times when you're going to need to water more frequently, such as when you're putting your seedlings in at first, you need to water more often because they're still getting established. But even when I do that, I water very deeply, leave them for a day, and then I check. And I don't water them again unless they actually need watered. And I'll wait and I'll wait and I'll wait until they're just the littlest bit floppy. Like that's why these guys are floppy, is because last night they were fine. And now they need watered. So I'll be watering them all as soon as this video is over. So I was also mean and started hardening off my tomatoes today, even though I was planning on waiting until May. Honestly, given the weather that we've had, that's a good decision. If I had a greenhouse out there, that's what I would be doing. Stick them out as soon as you can. You'll get hardier plants that way. Our season is not long. Even though we have unseasonably warm weather right now, we do not know what the fall is going to look like. Yeah, they won't. Erin says that her plants hated being hardened off early. Yeah, they won't enjoy it. they might need an extra little bit of cover to be outside. Another trick that I do, so the best advice for hardening off is you put them in a shady area for a day. The next day you put them in a shady area, and then for 1 hour you put them in the sun, and then you move them back to the shade. And you sort of do this in a gradual sort of back and forth. I cannot be bothered. Also, I work. I'm not usually home to move them for an hour of sun. So our house is very tall. So the shade in our yard moves. So what I do is I like to put my greenhouse in the middle of on our patio, which is in the middle of the yard, which gives them a really good balance of sun and shade. So because our backyard where I put them faces north, and the sun, goes east to west. So our backyard faces basically due north. So with the greenhouse in the middle of our yard, the way that it works is the morning sun and the early afternoon sun, when it's at its hottest and most, the strongest sun, they're not going to get that. They're still going to be in the shade. And then they're going to get sort of late afternoon, evening sun, which is much gentler. And they're going to be in cover. So when they're in the shade, even though it's cool, they're still going to be getting some extra residual heat because they're on a cement patio, which holds heat and will then release it and keep your plants a little bit warmer in a microclimate. So that's sort of another way to do it. Instead of moving your plants back and forth, find a spot where they can be, and most of the time they will be in the shade, but they will get a little bit of gentler sun every day if you aren't able to move them around. I am planning on doing a video where I show you how I harden off my plants. But I haven't done it yet, so I can't point you to that. But if you have questions on how to harden off your plants, definitely send me those questions either on YouTube or on Facebook, and I will answer them when I do a video about hardening off. So, what else? These are doing pretty good. I don't know, Erin, do you have any more questions? I'm totally ready for your specific questions. Go for it. While Erin is typing, I'm going to talk about my greenhouse a little bit. So I'm particularly excited to do greenhouse because I want to do tomatoes and eggplant and peppers. What kind of hascaps? What varieties do I have? Oh, I don't know if I remember. I have the tags. I tell you what, I have the tags on my hascap bushes specifically for this reason. So for those of you who aren't aware, hascaps are sort of kind of like blueberries, but they are more cold tolerant. So they work better if you're in a cold zone. For many berry bushes, but hascaps in this case, you need to have specific varieties so that they will cross-pollinate each other. I will look up the list that I used when I bought my hascaps because there are some that will not cross-pollinate. It has to do when they're flowering. So if you have two different varieties of hascap bushes, one flowers super early and one flowers super late, and there's no overlap, they're not going to cross-pollinate each other. That is not going to work. You need to have ones that have an overlap. So there are some varieties that specifically have a very long flowering period. So they're actually able to cross-pollinate with multiple other kinds. So my hascap bushes can also be cross-pollinated, I believe, by my Nanking cherry, which I have 2 of. So I will look up that link, and when I post this video to YouTube, I will add it to the description. Do you think greenhouses will have hascap bushes already? Hascap bushes usually come in when they get their spring shipments, so I don't know that they will have them yet, but they should have them within the next month at the latest. Are there good and bad times to plant hascap berries? So any fruiting bush or tree, the best time to plant them is in the middle of the summer, but you could also plant them in the spring. Now, if you plant your fruiting bushes in the spring, or your trees, you do not want to let them fruit that year. You want them to grow roots. Where we live, it gets very cold. You need your plant to be well established by the time we hit cold weather. So, Erin, if you're going out and you're buying hascap berries, as tempting as it is to let them grow berries this year, don't do it. Which means you go out and you pick off all of their beautiful flowers, which is hard to do. Jude from Southern Ontario, thank you for subscribing. There are not very many Canadian plant YouTubers, which is part of why I started my channel. Do I have any tips on what store has the cheapest pink splash and albo variegated syngonium online? I have not done, this is Tori. I have not done a ton of online shopping yet. It is on my list, but I haven't done a ton, and it's hard to find places that are shipping in Canada. Really? I pulled on one of her mats by accident. I'm sorry. You need to go down. So I will look into where you can find some albo syngonium and pink splash. They are definitely both on my wish list. I would love to have another albo syngonium. So, have I seen any pink arrowhead at Home Depots? I haven't seen. Oh, Tori's knocking stuff over. I have seen some pink arrowheads, but they haven't ever been all that happy, to be honest, Jude. Now, that being said, the spring plant shipments that we get of like houseplants, they do tend to be a lot happier, and we get more variety because they don't want to ship anything that's all that exciting in the winter when there's risk of frost damage. So that's kind of how that works. Yeah, Erin, don't kill your Hascap bushes. You can definitely buy them in the spring. That will actually give them a good long time to establish themselves. Just don't let them flower this year. If you do, so this is the thing. You can let them make each 1 or 2 little berries, but then you have to race the squirrels for them. So you can try it, but if you're going to be heartbroken if you don't get the like 1 berry that you saved for yourself, it may not be worth it. Our Hascap berries, we did get some Hascaps last year. These are also Hascaps are also sometimes called honeyberries. So if you're searching for them online and you're not finding Hascap, you may find them under honeyberry. They do not keep once they're picked as well as blueberries do, but they're very delicious. They're good for jams and pies. And I actually found them really, really good. We got some last year for the first time. But our plants got kind of eaten by the hares last year. This year I fed our hares hay so that they wouldn't eat my Hascap bushes. Yeah, so keep that sort of in mind. I got a fly in my coffee. Dang it. I need to deal with my fruit fly, my fungus gnat problem. They're such a pain. Anyway, does anybody have any other questions about growing, starting things outside in our zone? Erin, did you have any more questions? Potato situation. You did not store your potatoes properly, right? I heard about that. They're desiccated. I think I accidentally stored them in salt. Yeah, I saw your post about that. You may or may not be able to plant them. I don't know if soaking them would help. Usually you don't soak potatoes. What I would do is take your potatoes and cut them in half and see what the center is like. So if they're completely desiccated and like brown and have no moisture all the way through, it's not worth your time to plant those potatoes. If there's still some like normal looking potato in the middle, it might be worth it to try planting those. But I would definitely buy different seed potatoes. Side note, if you live in the Edmonton area, I would highly recommend buying seed garlic, potatoes, and onions now. Everything is getting sold out very quickly for gardening because so many people are home and taking up gardening this year. So do not wait. Go and buy them like this week. Canadian Tire does have them all in. I bought mine from Holes. Let's look at the potatoes that I picked. That's a good thing you could do. Oh, for goodness. Here we go. All So I bought some garlic. I like red garlic, so that's the one that I picked. And like I said, these will be going in as soon as I can possibly get them in. I would like to get them in this week. Then for potatoes, I really love these Russian blue. And I'm just going to open this bag so I can show you. So these are actually ready to plant at this stage. I may cut this in half and let them sit out for a couple of days so it calluses over to see if I can get a second seed potato from this half. But I actually have a bunch of seed potatoes, so I don't really need to. I just like to get more out of it. But like these are all, this is a perfect level of readiness to plant them. So I would definitely do that. So there's those. And what else do we have in my bag of goodies? We have Chieftain seed potatoes. Do you cover the sprout bits with soil? Yes. So when you're planting potatoes, let me grab that one again. Okay. So potato sprouts are actually very, very cool. These sprouts that are coming off will, if they stay and they hit dirt, they will turn into roots and then they will grow other potatoes. So each one of these little nubby bits will either grow another root, like a sprout, or grow a potato. If they hit air, they will turn and grow leaves because it's the same part of the plant and it just depends what's surrounding it. So you would take this, I would plant it sprout side up because it's going to grow more sprouts off of the nodes that stay under the ground. So I would plant it in a little hole like this, cover it up to about here, and then in about a week, you're going to see potato leaves at the top. It'll do really well. But yes, you would cover this gently. Do not like pack it or you're squishing. And if they break, they will not then grow, right? So they would grow more. It would just take longer. Okay. So I have the red Russian ones, and then I have these Chieftain potatoes, which are a red storage potato. I didn't get all of my first picks this time because Holes was sold out of the ones that I typically buy. But I've had Chieftain before, and I do like them. And then I got, so these ones are another storage potato, kind of like russets. They're a gold potato. So early mid-season harvest is what the bag says. Full bunches in this bag. There's lots of potatoes. And then I have this bag of mixed ones. So banana, French fingerling, and Russian blue is what's in this bag. So I have lots of different potato types to plant. Will a frost kill them? Once they have leaves, you do want to protect the leaves from frost. So you don't need to cover it unless there's a frost warning. So what you would do is you would plant your potatoes. Once you see the leaves actually coming up, you would keep your eye on the weather report, check it every night. And if there is a frost warning, you would go out and cover them. Now, you could cover them by putting a pot over top of the greens just to protect the greens, or you could just lay a sheet over your row of potatoes, and that would be enough. Just make sure you weigh your sheet down with rocks or something. But once they have leaves, you do need to protect them. Yeah, the leaves, like they will come back. Potatoes are very hardy. You're not going to totally kill your potatoes and ruin your harvest if you don't, but it will set you back. And if the point is to extend your season, then you do want to be protecting those greens. They don't like being frosted. So, all right. I think that is everything that I have for today. Got dirt everywhere now. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.